Hi everyone, and welcome back to our unexpected party. So today we are making apple tart and raspberry jam because, and hopefully I pronounce this correctly, Bifur is the one who requests it. So if you are a Hobbit fan and you live in the UK, lucky you, it means that you actually get to buy the proper apple. You get to buy the Bramley for cooking up your apple tart. It would have been what Tolkien was most familiar with at the time. For the rest of us, we are going to have to settle with the Granny Smith apple. Now just quickly, the difference between an apple pie and an apple tart is basically the tart has no cover. Simple as that. Now in terms of the raspberry jam, if you are wanting to make this from scratch to put into your apple tart, I would definitely say it's amazing making it from scratch. You're basically just taking 2 cups of raspberries, 1 cup of white sugar, a teaspoon of lemon juice, popping it into a saucepan, giving it a really good stir over medium heat, waiting for that all to break down. Just keep stirring as you go so you don't burn it, and eventually you will have a lovely jam. From memory, I think mine took 15-20 minutes to cook, and it does keep really well in the fridge for a week or 2. So with that, we are now going to make our apple tart. This is where you guys get to learn from my mistakes because I kept making the same mistake. I was chopping up my apples and putting them straight raw into the pie, and I was ending up with soggy pastry at the bottom and too much liquid. There are ways of fixing this, but I would say there's actually a better way of doing this right from the beginning, and that is to cook your apples whole before you use them in your pie. In saying this, when you cook your pie, and if you do happen to have liquid of the apple and the raspberry, oh my gosh, just drain it out into a mug and add some boiling water, and it is like divine. Anyways, how to make the apple tart correctly. So you are going to grab either 3 large apples or 5 medium apples. It always depends on the size of them. You are going to pop those into some water, bring that in a pot, bring that to a boil, and let that cook for half an hour on a low simmer, and then you're going to pull that out, and then you're going to set that aside to cool. Alright, on to the rest of it. To make our pastry, we are going to sift together the flour and the salt. So that's 1.5 cups of flour and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You are going to cut some cold butter into that flour. So that's 115 grams of cold butter. Chop that into small cubes, and you're going to rub that together with your fingers or in a mixer until it resembles breadcrumbs. Then you're going to add cold water, teaspoon by teaspoon, and keep mixing that until the dough is formed. And you want it to hold together, but it shouldn't be dry and crumbly, and it shouldn't be too wet. If it is too wet, add more flour. So you're going to roll that dough out thinly, and I keep twisting my dough as I roll. That way I don't get unevenness. So I'll roll a little bit and then do a 1/4 turn, roll some more. And then you're going to pop that into your pie shell and just trim those edges, and you can either use fingers or a fork to create a little bit of an edge. Then you are going to spoon in your raspberry jam and spread that over the pie shell base until that's completely covered. Then you're going to core and slice your apples, and then layer those slices in what I would call an appealing way. So basically, I would layer that in a circle and kind of create a pattern that way. You are going to sprinkle, how much would I say? Maybe it was a 1/4 cup, 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar between your apple layers. And then on the top layer, you are going to finish off with a sprinkling of brown sugar and some cinnamon on top as well. Best way of cooking an apple tart, you're going to preheat your oven to 220 degrees Celsius or 425 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to pop that apple tart in the oven. You're going to let that cook for 15 minutes, and then you're going to quickly reduce your heat to 175 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you're going to let that cook for another 30 or 40 minutes until the apples are cooked and soft and the pastry is browned. Basically, the whole idea is to let the apples start cooking quite quickly, but then you want to reduce that heat because the last thing you want is your pastry to burn. Now, before we head off, I do want to talk about some of the descriptions. There are a lot of requests, and I wonder whether some of those things are actually supposed to combine with others. Just because we said raspberry jam and apple tart doesn't mean necessarily that they need to go together, because one of the requests is for some cheese. Now, Bifur could have been just requesting cheese to go with some bread or a little bit of a snack, but I also wanted to bring up that in the UK, I'm not sure if that's the common thing now, but definitely in the past, eating slices of cheese, it can be aged cheddar all the way through to Derby cheese, was served with your apple pie or your apple tart. So if you want to try something a little bit more traditional, you could serve up some cheese with your apple tart for your unexpected party. And with that, we have one more recipe for our unexpected party to go.